It's 1885 on a dust-choked stretch of Texas rangeland, and the temperature has just cracked 100 degrees. A cowboy climbs down off his horse. He hasn't bathed in 11 days. His boots are held together with wire. He makes $25 a month, and by the time you subtract what he owes the outfit for tobacco and a new pair of gloves, he'll take home maybe 18. Nobody's about to draw a pistol. Nobody's riding into a saloon to shoot the piano player. He's just tired, sunburned, and hoping the cattle don't stampede tonight. That's the job. Forget what Hollywood told you about the American cowboy, because the newspapers, payroll ledgers, and diaries left behind by the actual men who did this work tell an almost completely different story. Today we're counting down the 10 biggest ways real cowboy life looked nothing like the movies, using the actual historical record to separate the myth from the man. So here's the premise, plain and simple. For the next 15 minutes, we're taking apart the Hollywood cowboy piece by piece. The guns, the hats, the diet, the diversity, the pay, the age, the horses, the danger, and replacing it with what the pay stubs, trail diaries, and census records actually say happened. Some of this is going to surprise you. Some of it is going to be a little depressing, honestly. But all of it is real. Coming in at number 10, the gunfighter cowboy. Movies love the image of a cowboy strapped with a low-slung Colt, ready to quick draw at high noon. Historians who've gone through cattle outfit records, though, note that plenty of trail bosses banned firearms outright on the drive, because a startled horse or an accidental discharge around 2,000 head of cattle was a genuine catastrophe, not a plot device. Some accounts suggest sidearms were more often used on rattlesnakes and coyotes than on other men. Quick pause, because I know what you're thinking, what about all those famous shootouts? We'll get to that, but for the average working cowboy, a six-shooter was closer to a tool in a toolbox than a badge of identity. Number 9, the wardrobe. The big white Stetson didn't dominate cowboy fashion the way it does on screen, at least not early on. Plenty of working men wore whatever hat kept the sun off, sometimes a beat-up derby or a flat-brimmed hat handed down from an older relative. The bandana wasn't a fashion statement either. It was there to filter dust kicked up by a couple thousand hooves, dust so thick that riding drag position at the back of a herd could feel like breathing through a sock. Translate that into modern terms. Imagine standing behind a fleet of 100 moving cement trucks on a dirt road with no windshield. That's a normal Tuesday on a cattle drive. Number 8, the diet. Steak dinners in the movies? Sure. In reality, the trail diet leaned hard on beans, salt pork, hardtack, and coffee boiled strong enough to strip paint. Beef itself was often too valuable walking to market to slaughter for dinner. Cowboys sometimes went weeks without fresh meat, and scurvy, yes, the sailor's disease, showed up on long drives because of the total absence of vegetables. Here's the thing, that's not a Hollywood detail anyone wants to put in a movie. Nobody's paying $8 for a movie ticket to watch a man's gums bleed from vitamin deficiency. Number 7, who these guys actually were. This one might be the biggest correction on the whole list. Historical estimates drawn from ranch payrolls and census data suggest that roughly 1 in 4 cowboys on the open range were black, and a large share of the rest were Mexican vaqueros, whose techniques, saddle designs, and even vocabulary, words like lasso, rodeo, and buckaroo, came directly from Spanish and Mexican ranching traditions that predate the American cowboy by more than a century. The all-white cowboy of classic cinema is, historians widely agree, one of the most significant distortions in the entire genre. Now, if you're enjoying this ride through the real Old West, go ahead and smash that like button and subscribe, because we've still got 7 entries and a climax left to go, and it only gets more interesting from here. Number 6, age. The cowboy in the movies is usually a weathered, gravel-voiced man somewhere north of 40. The real cowboy was frequently a teenager. Trail drive rosters regularly list hands as young as 14 or 15, and the physically brutal nature of the work meant most men aged out of it by their late 20s or early 30s, moving on to ranch ownership, town jobs, or in less fortunate cases, injury-forced retirement. Picture a modern warehouse job that's so physically punishing that almost nobody still holds it past 30. That's roughly the shelf life we're talking about. Number 5, the horse. In the movies, a cowboy and his horse are practically the same character, riding off into the sunset as a pair for life. On a real outfit, a working cowboy was typically assigned a string of 5 to 10 horses owned by the ranch, not by him personally, rotated through the week so no single animal got worn down. Legend loves the idea of a lone man and his loyal horse, but the record suggests it was closer to a fleet vehicle system. The cowboy didn't own the truck, he just had the keys for his sheep. Number 4, the pay and the class status. Here's something the movies almost never touch: cowboys were, socially speaking, near the bottom of the ladder. Wage records from the 1870s and 1880s put typical monthly pay somewhere between $25 and $40, plus food and a bunk, which in today's terms translates to something close to what a seasonal warehouse or agricultural laborer might make now. Modest, unstable, and dependent entirely on the ranch owner's mood and the cattle market. It was a job for young men with few other options, not a romantic calling. Number 3. The danger nobody put on a movie poster. Forget gunfights. The real killers on a cattle drive were rivers, weather, and the cattle themselves. Historians studying trail drive accounts point to drowning during river crossings, lightning strikes on open plains, and stampedes as the leading causes of cowboy death, far outpacing anything involving a pistol. A frightened herd of 2,000 cattle moving at a dead run has been compared by some modern estimates to the combined weight and force of roughly 200 small cars accelerating at once. Stop and think about that for a second. That's what a man on a spooked horse in the dark was expected to turn and control. Number 2. The loneliness and monotony. Movies compress months into a 2-hour runtime full of incident. The real cattle drive from Texas to a railhead in Kansas could take 3 to 4 months, covering somewhere around 1,000 to 1,500 miles, with most days involving nothing more dramatic than eating dust, eating beans, and watching the horizon. Some accounts describe cowboys singing to the herd at night, not for atmosphere, but because a sudden unfamiliar noise could trigger a stampede, and a low, steady human voice was one of the few things known to keep 2,000 nervous animals calm through the dark. Which brings us to number 1, and this is where the real story gets its most dramatic, best documented moment. The stampede itself, and specifically the kind of ordinary turned catastrophic night that ended more cowboy careers and lives than any gunfighter ever did. Picture a specific, well-documented type of night that trail crews dreaded on the Chisholm Trail sometime in the mid-1870s. The exact names and dates vary drive to drive, and historians studying these accounts are honest that no two retellings match perfectly, but the pattern shows up again and again in surviving diaries. It's just past midnight. The air is heavy, humid, the kind of stillness that trail hands learn to distrust. Then comes a flash of heat lightning on the horizon, followed seconds later by a crack of thunder directly overhead. In that instant, 2,000 cattle that had been lying peacefully go from a dead stop to a full run in under 3 seconds. There is no gradual buildup, no warning shot, just an explosion of noise, hooves, and raw animal panic in complete darkness. The cowboys on night watch, usually just 2 or 3 men, half asleep in the saddle moments before, now have to do something almost unthinkable. They have to spur their horses into a dead run alongside a stampeding herd in pitch black, over unfamiliar ground riddled with prairie dog holes and gullies, in order to reach the front of the herd and turn the leaders into a tight circle, a maneuver cowboys called milling the herd. A single misstep by the horse at that speed meant a fall directly into the path of 2,000 running animals, each weighing somewhere around 800 to 1,000 pounds. To translate that into something modern, imagine sprinting alongside a moving freight train, in the dark, hoping your footing holds, because if it doesn't, there's no way the train stops in time. Historians estimate that stampedes like this could carry a herd 6, 8, sometimes 10 miles before exhaustion or a skilled rider finally brought them back under control. And by the time the sun came up, crews might spend an entire additional day just finding and regathering scattered cattle across the prairie, some of them found dead in ravines, legs broken, having run themselves right off the edge of a cut bank in the dark. This is the moment cowboy life actually built its reputation on. Not a duel at high noon, a blind gallop through the dark chasing panicked animals, for wages that came out to less than $2 a day, with a real chance of dying in a way that would never make it into a Saturday matinee, because there's no clean, cinematic way to film a man being trampled by his own herd. So here's the honest, unromantic truth this whole video keeps circling back to. The American cowboy wasn't a gunslinger, and he wasn't a lone hero riding into legend. He was, more often than not, a broke, sunburned teenager or 20-something, frequently black or Mexican, working one of the most physically dangerous, monotonous, poorly paid jobs the American West had to offer. And the movie cowboy we all picture is a character built decades later, mostly in the 20th century, to sell a version of the frontier that was cleaner, whiter, and a whole lot less exhausting than the real one. The West wasn't tamed by fast hands and fair duels. It was worked slowly and painfully by kids on horseback who just wanted to make it to the next town alive. If this take on the real Old West hit different than the movie version, Do us a favor and hit subscribe. And share this with somebody who still thinks every cowboy walked around with 2 pistols and a grudge. We've got more of the real history behind the legend coming in the next video, so we'll see you there.